Okay, as we're whipping through some bikes for a bit of an overview of them, I'm going to talk about the Himalayan 411, which came out 2017. And I've been lucky enough this year to go on 3 tours involving the Himalayan 411. The first one was across India. We organised a trip from Chennai to Goa on a fleet of rented bikes out of Chennai, and I was on a Scram 411. A lot of the other guys were on Himalayans or some 350 Classics, an Interceptor or so, and I was on a white and red Scram with a big knobbly back tyre. And then I did Morocco, and we rented some bikes out of Marrakesh. There's lots of 411s that you can rent out of Marrakesh. And then this is a bike I picked up this year, and I took this on the France and Spain trip. So that was a road ride out through France, down east, Gorge du Tarn, down to the border with Spain through the Pyrenees, and then the N260 all the way back across to Santander and in. So that was about a 2,000 road trip on this one. So it's a standard bike, and that's where I'll start. I always liked the standard bike on the 411. I think there was just something so simple and so charming about the bike when it came out. Actually, the more you modify it, the worse you kind of get, and the further away from the true spirit of the bike that you seem to become. I think why they struck such a chord, and actually this is kind of my ground zero of the increased interest in the small bike market. I think without the 411, I don't think we would have the market as it is today, because what this did was go, look, every bike is getting bigger and more expensive. Does it need to be? Can we go cheaper, simpler, more accessible? And when the 411 came out in the UK in 2017 at 3,995, I mean, even then it was considered a cheap bike, and everyone thought it was going to be crap. An Indian built bike, the foot peg fell off in the promo video for it. Bag of crap, why would you buy one? Well, I bought one. I just broke my ankle on a bike accident on the motorway, and I was laid up, and this came out, and I got talking to Ian and Jack at Cooper Motorcycles in Northampton at a bike show, and we were talking about it. I said, yeah, go and order me one. I got a bit of compensation from an insurance policy I had for the accident. So I bought this, and I first went up to collect it, and I still had my foot in a cast, and I just rode it around their car park, and I had it for a few weeks before I could finally get out on it. And I still got a weak ankle. I shouldn't really have been riding bikes, but it's when I lived up in Worcester, and the first ride did some green laning up around Worcester on some farm tracks, and there and then in that second I knew that we got something special. And why it's so special, and I don't care what anybody says, is because it's so accessible and it gives so much confidence. It just, for whatever reason, however it's been designed, whether it was intentional or otherwise, but the way this thing sticks in the dirt and rides in the dirt, gives great stability and confidence, has meant that so many people who've started riding off-road for the first time or going on an adventure for the first time can do it. It's a bike that allows anybody to do anything within reason, obviously, and it's the reason why so many are popular on the rental fleets in Morocco and stuff like that. I find it trail rides really well. Obviously there's a downside of ground clearance, and it's not a light bike, it's nearly 200 kilos, but the weight is all carried along this axle line. And I've always said it's like riding like a girder. It's like a girder slung across the ground, and you're just steering it. It doesn't turn quick, it's not an agile bike, and as I say, it's not got a lot of ground clearance, but it sticks to the dirt, and because that long stroke motor is pulsing slowly, it gains natural traction, it gets natural grip. So irrespective of what tyres you've got on it, some bikes are really sensitive to tyres. You need a good tyre to be able to put the power down in the way that the bike makes its power, but this long stroke motor makes power so rhythmically that it just generates natural grip. So it'll climb up chuggy, muddy things quite nicely, and it'll grip really nicely and give, as I say, people confidence. So that first ride on it, I knew it was a special bike, and I think it didn't take me long to put a message out on Facebook saying this is the best travel bike of the last 10 years, to which I got quite a lot of ridicule from people saying, how can it be, it's a piece of Indian crap. But I still maintain that it's a bike that's transformed the market in terms of accessible motorcycling and accessible adventure. Yes, it's not fast, 24 horsepower, means it is slow, but it's only slow if you ride it slow, or I hate to put a cat amongst the pigeons, if you're a type of rider who can only go fast when they've got a lot of power. They've not got a lot of natural riding capability. They rely on the speed of the engine to propel them into the momentum they need to keep a good pace. This is a bike that's got such a wonderful chassis, and that power is made in such a smooth and torquey manner that you can flow down a road as fast as most roads will allow you to go and keep up with most bikes on that road, irrespective of how much power and weight it's got. I mean, that first bike I bought, I did 15,000 miles in about 4 or 5 months. I did Land's End John O'Groats, I guided a Land's End John O'Groats trip Ireland. I took it coast to coast America. And on the tail of the dragon chasing sports bikes, obviously the sports bikes are always going to get away from you eventually, but it hustles. It was a bike that hustles, and I think the reason it hustled so well is because it was suspended so well. The suspension was so good. It allowed the bike to be controlled and guided in a way that gave you confidence. It was a brilliant bit of chassis engineering, I think. Harris Performance in the UK, who were latter bought out by Royal Enfield, but they sprinkled a bit of genius on this bike. And then everything else, just its robustness, the fact it got a centre stand, the fact that they put these front racks on it, the fact that it's screw and locked up valves, which meant you could self-service it, the fact that everything was cheap to buy and cheap to replace and cheap to repair. There were niggles, it was Royal Enfield emerging from their dark period of just building bullets quite badly in India. It was their first propulsion into be taken seriously as a mainstream manufacturer. You think of the rise of Royal Enfield in the 7 or 8 years, it's been humongous, but it started with this is the bike that started to propel them, and it started to make people take them seriously as motorcycle manufacturers. And so I think the motorcycle community adopted it, even though the motorcycle press didn't, I would say, is my biggest conclusion to this. It really showed how out of touch the press were. They slated this bike, nobody wanted to ride it, poo-pooed it, it's a crap bike, why would you, it's slow and heavy. Meanwhile, the grassroots riders who just wanted to get out and ride a bike were buying these in droves and trail riding them for the first time and getting out on adventures for the first time. It was a ripple. It was a ripple that spread to give us the bikes that we're getting now at the price point we are now at. Looking at that Triumph Scrambler over there at 400, it's less than £6,000. If this hadn't reset the market, we wouldn't be looking at that sort of price, or possibly that sort of bike. Personally, it's a shame. I think the direction they went with the new 450 Himalayan, I think it lost this bike's attributes, which is accessibility and manageability. And when I put people on the new 450, I've had some people struggle to manage it, to lift it, to ride it in a way that they never did on this. So I think the 450 was a different bike for a different audience. That's what I've ascertained from putting people on both bikes in my place, and also seeing both bikes being used by different people on adventures. The type of rider riding the 450 now is different to what the rider was who rode these. So for the people looking to upgrade their 411s, I don't think there's a natural place to upgrade to. I think the Scram 440 that they launched in India would have gone down a storm over here and probably would have outsold the 450. Because different bikes, and I don't think there's been a natural movement of people from 411s onto 450s. I think the 450s brought a new audience, a new rider, which is probably what Royal Enfield wanted, to be honest. So they're probably happy with how that's gone. But the 411 for me is the bike I would go back to. And it was interesting on that France and Spain trip. I set off on this, and I had Ben helping me, a colleague who took my Himalayan 450, and he rode it all the way down to the Pyrenees, and I rode this all the way down to the Pyrenees. And we swapped for about half an hour or so. And I did an early video on the 450 Himalayan where around Ireland I just couldn't get it. It didn't work for me as a travel bike. That engine now, 6-speed, it was always between gears. You always went up and down and up and down, and it felt top heavy. It never felt to get into the flow, that sort of nice, rhythmical, almost karmic flow that you get into on a 411. And it was snapped back into it on that half an hour of test ride in the Pyrenees. It's all effort, it's all tipping it in and gear changing and power at the top end. And then you get back on the 411, it's all lovely, soft, smooth torque, rolls into corner rather than drops into corners. The way that the 450 and 411s carry the weight is completely inverted. They're like a Weeble. Imagine a Weeble or weight at the bottom and it rocks like that. The 450 inverted it so it's like that. So it's all weight at the top. So it tips quick, but it doesn't give you that sort of soft, flowing motion that you get with the old 411. Very different bikes, really. So that little comparison out in the Pyrenees really solidified, cemented my fondness for this bike, because I'd not ridden or travelled on 411s for the last few years. I've moved on to bigger things, other things, CF Motos, etc. But this year to be reminded in places like India and in Morocco, in India it's It's like putting on a pair of slippers in India. The power suits the roads, the suspension suits the road, the weight suits the traffic. You know, it all blends into one perfectly in India and Morocco and Spain and France. So it shouldn't have worked. This bike shouldn't have worked. It's a complete antithesis of the way the market was going. We shouldn't have bought this. We shouldn't have liked it. It shouldn't have been as popular as it was. But it was. It dug a trench. In which a lot of other bikes have slid into in order to compete in this affordable budget practical motorcycling market. Centre stands, guard racks. Yeah, it was a bike that will never be bettered for utilitarian motorcycling. You know, as people say, it's the Land Rover discovery of the motorcycling world, and it most certainly is. So, yes. Great fondness of this bike, and very cheap now. You know, they're so cheap to buy. 1,500 quid, 1,700 quid, 2,000 quid. This one's for sale if you want it 2,450. It's a nice bike, but you can get them cheaper. You know, and as I say, if it were me, I'd just leave them standard. I think the more people fiddle, the worse they get, because the bigger the expectation gets. You spend 200 quid on a cam and a filter and an exhaust and other things. Yeah, the performance gain will never match with the spend. So if you are going to get one, get a standard one, ride it for a bit, and then if you're going to modify it accordingly. But don't just think I need to spend money on cams and plugs and all this sort of nonsense. The best Himalayan for me is a standard one, because the expectation meets reality. You know, you start spending money, it can never work. But unfortunately, there's a lot of companies out there selling a lot of expensive accessories, or a lot of accessories for the 411, and they'll always try and convince you that their widget, their gadget, is going to add that 4x5 in the cam. It's going to add 4 or 5 brake horsepower, they said, on that cam. It bollocks. Makes it a bit punchier at the top end. I won't say it doesn't. A little bit, but does it make it faster? Not really. Yeah. Slow and simple. All right, 411 Himalayan. Timeless bike. Really is timeless bike. Love it. All right, cheers.